Gotta get that. Gotta get that. Gotta get that. Gotta get that. That. Boom, boom, boom. Gotta get 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 that. Boom, boom, boom. That boom, boom, boom. That boom, boom, boom. Yo.
Welcome to our history and government class today, Form 4 work. Please SMS us your name and where you are watching us from using the number 21450. 21450. I am Mrs. Githinji. Today we are going to look at ingredient number 2 of success, and that is hard work. In order for us to be successful, we need to work very hard in whatever we are doing, in our studies, in our day-to-day work, and this one will guarantee us a successful life. So in our today's class, we are going to look at the results of World War I. In our previous class, we looked at the peace settlement, the peace treaty, and we went ahead looking at the results and the failure of the peace treaty, whereby we say that one of the failure is that Germany was blamed a lot, and this one made her to create a lot of resentment and ill feelings. And we also say that the interest of other communities like Africans and the minor nations, they were ignored. Also Italy interest was also ignored. And finally, the USA, another reasons for the failure of the League of Nations, another reason for the failure of the peace treaty or the facile peace treaty was that USA, which was a very, very key player during the peace conference, did not ratify or did not sign to be a member of the League of Nations. We are going to talk about the League of Nations later, and we are still going to refer to this. So now, the First World War, it has come to an end. People are no longer fighting. But what were the results? What were the results? What were the results? After it have come to an end, what were the effects? What were the effects? So by the end of this class, we should have looked at the effects of the First World War, looking at the negative one and the positive ones, because we had the positive effects of First World War. And in doing this, we are going to look at the political. We are going to look at the political results. Then after that, we look at the economic, and finally the social result. Because this First World War, it had a very, very great impact all over the world, all over the world. So number one, political effects or results, all impacts, results, effects, all impact. So number one, there was creation of new nations in Europe. New nations in Europe, they were created after the end of the First World War. For example, we had Poland being created. We also had Finland. We also had Finland being created, and also Yugoslavia. So these nations came into being as the result of the First World War. Number two, Another political result or effect of the First World War is that USA emerged as the world political power. USA emerged as a USA became a world political power. So even today, as we look at the USA, it being a very, very important nation, we are finding that it started coming up. It started coming up during the First World War, and by the end of it all, it became a very powerful nation. It became a very powerful nation. Then another political result was that Germany's size was reduced. We looked at that when we are looking at the peace treaty, but this one affected Germany because her size was reduced. And we also said that she lost her colonies in Africa. She lost her colonies in Africa, which were put under the League of Nations. She also lost Alaska and Lorraine, the colonies we talked about, which also contributed to the coming up of the First World War. Then another effect, political effect of the First World War was the creation of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was created, and it was created, the League of Nations, we are going to have a full subtopic talking about the League of Nations, the forerunner of United Nations as we know it today. So the League of Nations was created with the aim of maintaining world peace and security. So the nations, as they signed the peace treaties, they decided to have the League of Nations, and they wanted to use the League of Nations. Through the League of Nations, they wanted to maintain world peace and security and to prevent an occurrence of another war. But as we all know, we had the Second World War. So that's, we are going to look at the League and see why it failed to maintain the world peace. Another reason, another political effect of the First World War, is that it's led to the emergence of communist Russia. It led to Russia becoming a communist state. This one, we are going to look at it in detail when we talk about what we refer to as the Cold War. But when we are looking at the First World War, when we are looking at the end of the First World War in 1917, we say that there was a revolution in Russia, and this revolution in Russia led to it becoming a communist country. So this was the revolution was as a result of the First World War, and later we are going to look at communism in Russia when we look at the Cold War. Also, another result, another effect of the First World War is that it's promoted nationalism, especially in European colonies. There was promotion of nationalism. There was that promotion of nationalism among the colonial people, among the colonial people, like in India and also in Africa. So how did the First World War promote nationalism? Is because we say that the Africans, for example, the Africans, they went to fight during the First World War on the side of their of the colonizers at that time. So when they went there to fight, and they were fighting alongside the European citizen, when they were fighting there, they realized that the Europeans were as they were people as they were, because before that time, because they had not interacted closely with their colonizer, they were thinking that the Europeans were very, very superior people. They were thinking that Europeans were very, very superior people. But when they were fighting during the First World War, being in the same battlefields, they realized that Europeans, or the whites, they were as human as they were. They were suffering as they were also suffering when they were fighting. They were getting hungry as they were getting, the Africans were also getting hungry. And they also learned that even them Africans, they can fight. They can fight. They acquired the skills. The Africans also acquired the skills of fighting. And when they came back after the First World War, they now started demanding for their independence, because they realized that their colonizers were as human as they were. So because of this one, we are finding that the First World War, it promoted nationalism, as we are also going to see later in another topic. Then another effect, political effect of the First World War, is that it led to the rise of dictators. Rise of dictators. So we had dictators coming up immediately after the First World War, and some of these dictators were people like Benito Mussolini. This was a leader, a dictator in Italy. We are going to talk about him more when we look at the Second World War. And then we have Adolf Hitler. This one, Germany. So dictators came up as a result of the First World War. We are going to talk about them more. So those were the political effects of First World War. What about economic effects? We are finding that one, huge sums of money was spent. There was huge sum of money which was spent on war-related equipment, and also when we talk about things like guns, we talk about the tanks, we talk about maintaining the marines, we talk about ammunition. So a lot of money was spent. So number one, huge sum of money. A lot of money was spent. A lot of money was spent during the First World War. So we are finding that both sides, the Central Powers and the Allies powers, they had to spend a lot of money. They had to spend a lot of money. Then also number two, the increased insecurity, because at that time when people were fighting, there was a lot of insecurity, and this one disrupted economic activities. So we had economic activities being disrupted. Economic activities were disrupted as a result of the First World War, whereby people, for example, trading, they were not able to trade. in the way they could have wanted to because there was insecurity. Agriculture. People were disrupted in carrying out such economic activities. The civilians were disrupted in doing that. Then we had destruction of properties. Destruction of property, and we are finding that infrastructures, for example, the schools, the factories, the roads, the bridges, they were destroyed. They were destroyed as people were fighting, So we are finding that these were the economic results, the economic effect of the First World War, Now, what were the social effects? How did the war affect people at the social level? Not only people, the world, socially. Social effects. The social effects, one, when we talk about the social effects, we are finding that there was loss of lives. Loss of life. As people were fighting, very, very many people were killed. Very, very many people were killed. And it's approximated that about 13 million people were killed during the First World War. Then number two, displacement of people. Displacement of people. Very many people were displaced from their home. Hundreds, thousands of people, they had to run away. They had to run away from their home. And this one led to refugee problem. Refugees problem because of people being displaced. And then them running away from their home. Then we are finding that there was untold misery and suffering. There was a lot of misery and also suffering. A lot of misery and suffering during the First World War, whereby families were separated, children were left as orphans, and we are having that there was a lot of suffering. People not even having enough to eat. And that one was also another social effect, whereby we are finding that we had starvation and food shortages. Food shortage. So we had starvation, and also we had food shortages. Thus, many countries now, they started depending on others to get their food. They started depending on others to get their food. So those were the social effects. And if you look at all these effects, they are negative. The positive were very few. Let's mention them. Creation of the League of Nations, that was a positive effect. We are going to look at it. Then there was advancement in surgery and in medical area, because as they were fighting, they had to look at ways in which they were going to deal with the injury. Then transport and communication was also developed, because the army, the people who are fighting, they needed better motor vehicles, they needed aircrafts and such. And finally, it brought about gender equality in Europe. This was positive, because now women started working in factories. So those were the results of the First World War. We have looked at the political, economic, social, and we have concluded by looking at the positive results, which were very, very few compared to all the negative effects, we have looked at. So we are finding that come the League of Nations, the world did not want to go at at war again. So in our next class, we are going to look at the League of Nations and why, what it did. For any comment, question, any tip you want to get on history and government Form 4 work, you can SMS by the use of the number 21126. His form. This is Form 4 work. His form 21. The number again, get the number 21126. Thank you.